Now, notice that in the past, price tends to bounce off the trend line every time it touches it. This tells us that in the future, if price ever approaches the trend line again, there's a high probability that we can expect another bounce. So, a possible trade setup here would be to take a buy trade if price retraces.
So do you understand what he just said just then?
Now, the second reason why trend lines are useful is that if price breaks a trend line, it could signal a possible change in trend direction. For example, in this chart, we've applied a trend line by connecting the swing highs, and it clearly shows that the market is in the downtrend. But right here, price broke above the trend line, and soon after, the trend shifts from a downtrend to an uptrend. Knowing this, the next time price breaks out of a trend line during the downtrend, we could set up a possible buy trade. But keep in mind, the examples I showed you are just ideal scenarios. In real trading, we can't just blindly enter a trade every time price touches or breaks a trend line, because these patterns rarely work by themselves. We need to combine other concepts, such as price action, to increase our chances of getting successful trades, which we'll get into later in the video. Now, before we start trading with trend lines,
explain
we
it
first
to me.
need to know how to actually
The
draw
daddy
them
don't
properly.
know.
Okay, hold on.
Explain it to me.
So, this, you see, up and down, 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 up and down,
Okay.
up.
Now where would I buy it? Where would I buy it on here?
Right here. You will buy right here.
Okay. Okay. Where do you see a hammer on here? Where's the hammer?
I already told you.
But do you see another hammer on there?
Hold on, let me use my eyes. Yes, I do.
Point to it.
It's like a little tiny one.
Okay, I see a hammer. What does a hammer mean? Do you know what a hammer means? Can you tell me what a hammer means? Because I don't know. Okay, but you know how to point out a hammer. That's good. Okay.
I know how to put it on the hammer because my eyes are really good, huh?
All right. Okay, go ahead, play it.
Because if you get this wrong, the strategies won't work anyway. So, here's an in-depth guide on how I draw trend lines. To draw a trend line, we first need to identify something called swing points in the price. A swing point is when price moves into an area and then moves away from it. For example, here we can see that price went down and then reverses back up. Now, this lowest point before the price moves away is called a swing low. Our job is to find as many of these swing points as possible on the chart.
What would you do at the
And
swing
in this
low?
case, we can see
Right there. What would you do right there?
So, if I went like down here and then up here, all the way up here, I would just.
But at the swing low, you would do what? What would you?
If I just like move higher, but go back here, I would just buy.
That's what you do. You buy. Good job. You always buy low and sell high, right? Good job. Good job. Go ahead. Go ahead. Let's go again.
Okay,
Let's watch the rest.
multiple swing lows right here. However, the key here is to only mark the swing points that are major and obvious to spot. So,
was acting,
only mark the ones that stand out.
Like the,
Now, there needs to be at least two major swing points in order for us to be able to draw a trend line.
Like
In this case,
tonight,
we have more than enough. So, once you identified them, simply draw a straight
The future of money isn't dollars, it's crypto. That's where Gemini comes in.
out.
It's not just another
line connecting them. So that's going to be your trend line. Now, a common question people ask when drawing a trend line is, should I draw them touching the wicks of the candles? Or should I draw them touching the bodies of the candles? The answer is, whichever gets you the most touch points. For example, looking at this chart, if we draw a trend line by touching the wicks, we get a total of 3 touch points. However, if we draw it touching the candle bodies, we get a total of 5 touch points. So for this specific chart, since the goal is to get as many touch points as possible, we'll draw it touching the bodies. Now, an important thing to keep in mind is that trend lines should be treated like areas or zones. instead of fixed lines. So when drawing them, as long as the trend line is still within the general area of the swing points, the trend line is still valid. It doesn't matter if you draw it slightly higher like this or slightly lower like this. As long as it's still within that area, the trend line is still valid. So don't overthink it too much. Now, if we look at the price action on top, we can also see multiple major swing points. So let's try drawing a trend line. If we draw it like this, notice that some swing points overlap the trend line, meaning this isn't the right way to do it. But if we draw it like this instead, notice that the swing points are now touching properly. So this is how I'll draw the trend line.
So what would you do at the top?
Let's look at another example.
Stop it right there. So what would you do at the top at the circle points? What would you do right there? Sell. Good job.
Because you take a touch point, like buy goes up, sells go down, if you can see that.
That's right.
The hammer.
That's right. That's right, correct. Good job.
This up, this up. And then this go down. This go up. This go down.
Right. So, buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell. GOG. Let's go.
Make this even clearer. Again, the first step is to identify major.
No, I know this one and this one a lot.
Okay.
I actually, absolutely, I can prove it right now.
Okay.
So you see, all of these charts making A, like, well, it's not kind of an A, but you see these charts.
Like, I see them. I see the A.
So, look closely.
Okay.
Is like kinda of the up and down. And guess what? That because it actually is. Because look, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down.
All right.
But there was actually more that I gotta tell you about this. So you see this buy point?
I see the buy points.
When you make it to the end, there was like a little tiny one right here.
Okay.
So you might not make that much. You might make like $400 or something.
Okay, like $400. Well, that's still good. Making $400 profit.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Only $1 is bad though.
Okay, let's play.
Your swing points. And here, we can immediately see
Daddy,
multiple obvious swing points.
My body parts
We have multiple
still.
swing highs here and multiple swing lows here. Next, we simply draw the trend line by connecting these swing points. So, this will be our trend line. To recap, the key to drawing trend lines is simply identifying major swing points and connecting them to get as many touch points as possible. And don't worry if you don't get it right the
Are you a
first time,
mime?
because the more you practice drawing them yourself,
Are you a mime?
the easier it will get.
What
All
does
right,
that mean?
now that you know how to
When
draw
you stand
trend lines
still
the
and
right
you're
way,
frozen.
I'm going to reveal the high win rate strategy
yeah.
that I use.
I
So,
can only
the way
talk
this
and
strategy
move my
works
eyes.
is we treat trend lines as key levels. Let's say you have an
Okay.
existing trend line drawn on a chart. Now, when drawing a trend line, we can see that price has bounced from it every time it touches in the past. So in the future, we could possibly expect another bounce. However, that doesn't mean we can just enter buy every time price touches the trend line, because this pattern won't always work. Like in this example. Here, you can see that price has rejected the trend line in the past, and now it can be seen touching it again, so you might expect another bounce. However, instead of bouncing, price instead breaks right through. So if you blindly bought at this trend line, you would have taken...
No, this one, a lot.
Okay.
So, you see this all the way up, but ends take a down point.
Yeah, it takes a down point.
And guess what? You see this selling trade breaking out. It's called a breakout at the sale. So You see this?
Uh-huh.
That means maybe like
a loss. And that's
yeah, you might get a loss because it won't always happen.
Okay.
Every single day, every single day, you will never forget it. But it won't always happen. There was only like, well, I guess there was only like a 2% chance that you would get it again, or a 1% chance.